Chapter 361 The Situation. You're listening at novelfull.audio. Max took a seat in one of the common halls of the Paradis Palace, as he discussed affairs candidly with Sam St. Maximus with his friends present. Before informing Max about his predicament, Sam silently listened to his end of the story as he smiled from time to time, knowing that what Max revealed was not the whole truth. Sam did not mind this. The boy was becoming cautious and it was a sign of him maturing, but the god needed to remind him of his place as he chuckled and said, "Congratulations on your promotion to Tier 4, I can no longer see through you, but you might want to restrain your aura if you don't want others to find out about your promotion." Max was stunned speechless. He had only revealed parts about him visiting the dragon capital and meeting Mira and Rhea and did not say anything about his tier promotion. "You are already Tier 4?" Sebastian asked in surprise as Max nodded in affirmation. Initially he did not wish to publicize this news, but now it was already out in the open. "You gave up on the path of the perfect warrior?" Anna asked in shock, thinking it was impossible for him to promote so quickly if he completed stat maximization. Max felt a headache incoming. These people knew him too well, it was difficult to hide anything from them. "No. I had some dragon help to reach stat maximization," Max said as he did not divulge the exact details, causing Sebastian to click his tongue and call him a lucky bastard. Asiva only smiled nervously. While she was happy that Mira helped Max so immensely, it also made her worried that Max would be attracted to her more now. Since she was her rival, she did not want Max to be drawn too much towards her side. Only Anna had a positive reaction to this news as she said, "I wonder what university principal would say when he finds out you did in 5 months what took him 30 years. The 4 kids giggled at this thought while Sam smiled kindly, sharing their mirth. After this, Max got serious as he said, "I have an aura leak." Sam smiled. It seemed like the kid had not been taught about this matter yet. Thankfully he was here today to teach him about this stuff. At the demigod level your aura finally starts to mature and leaves your body in a true sense to impose your will. Although it's weaker than a true god's, your aura will be able to scare Tier 0 and 1 newbies out of their minds if you wish to do so. They will be unable to attack you in such a state unless they are especially brave. At higher tiers your aura ability will improve, but you must learn how to control it. I'll give you a spell you can learn. It will help you suppress your aura," Sam said as he handed Max a skill scroll. Aura Expression, Legendary. The skill allows the wielder to effectively express his aura according to his will with perfect accuracy. Cost: 150 unit of mana/hour. Max raised his eyebrow in surprise. It was a legendary grade skill scroll, its value was definitely high. Not standing on ceremony, Max directly learned the skill, after which the scroll dissipated in his hands. Sam put on a bright smile once this happened as he said, "With this the debt between you and me has been settled." Max was puzzled. He did not recall any debt that the Patriarch owed him as he asked, "What debt?" What followed was a very painful story which made Max instantly regret his choice of asking the question. There was a huge mole inside the St. Maximus administration and it had created a ruckus for Max. With his true identity exposed, someone crazy enough could use all sorts of methods to blackmail him. While his nephews and niece were well guarded, there would always be times where they would head out of their guarded manor to attend some events where they might face misfortune because of his identity, just like how they did in Max's past life. He could not put them in harm's way, especially with his brother being dead. Thankfully he had just advanced to Tier 4 and had obtained a cloning ability with which he could make matters of his real identity a little more complex for others to fathom. Sighing deeply, Max said, "I'll handle this situation myself. Thank you for taking the time to inform me, Patriarch Sam." Max did not blame Sam too much. The Patriarch had already shown a lot of courtesy by informing him personally about this development and giving him a subsequent aura concealment skill as compensation. Meanwhile, Julian Caesar, "What do you mean our entire information network inside the St. Maximus clan had collapsed? It took me 10 fucking years and over 3 billion gold coins to set it up," Julian said angrily as he eyed the head of information angrily. The Patriarch Sam Maximus seemingly heard Elder Gervais's unnatural heartbeat using his ability, and after some inquiry he found out the truth, the information head reported softly as he did not have the confidence to speak boldly in front of the angry Julian Caesar. "That old fat fuck, how is his hearing so good? Aren't old men supposed to be deaf?" Julian said angrily, as he asked a rhetorical question. "He's a god." The information head replied, not understanding the sarcasm behind the question as Julian gave him an angry look. The information head flinched and did not dare utter another word. "I was going to submit your information report to the king today, but now that the entire network has collapsed, I'll wait for a few days to see how Sam St. Maximus reacts. We need to validate the authenticity of the report before submitting it, because I refuse to believe that the old fuck simply chanced upon the guilty elder a day after he leaked the news to us. He might have deliberately wanted to spread this news to us, we might be unknowingly dancing to his tunes. Roalpha D.Newell, that fat fucker with his repository of blackmailing secrets. We can't act rashly against him, as while his clan is 7th in strength, if it opens its gates of secrets it has collected over the years, it will bring down the entire noble society," Julian said as he decided to take a cautious approach and observe for a few more days regarding this matter. // Chapter 3 of 40, let's go. // Chapter 362 Catching Up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few days after returning from the Fields of Thunder, Max took time to understand the size of his current army and pay off his debt to Angakok. The matter of paying the Blood Shaman god back with 12 million units of mana was not a small one, and Max had to pull several strings to acquire enough potions for completing the procedure. If there was one risk Max was not willing to take ever in his life, it was offending Angakok over petty matters such as mana units. Somewhere deep down he already knew that not paying back the debt would have very bad consequences for him which he felt best remained unexplored. Thankfully, he maintained a large army and was known to splurge generously on them, which is why he could obtain the large order of high-grade mana potions without garnering suspicion of the legitimate seller channels. If an individual not belonging to any major group placed such a large order, she would undoubtedly be put under major surveillance. Hence in a way for Max to obtain it without much questioning it was one of the perks of being a rebel army chief. On the other hand, Max was pleasantly surprised to know that his army had expanded to 450,000 troops in strength and was expected to hit the 500,000 mark by next 45 days. A lot of old Paredes family troops who were initially apprehensive of trying to come back, rushed back once the Paredes capital was taken back by Raven. Every day at least a few hundred showed up, happy to be back home. Currently Max's strength was sufficient to capture the other 2 planets under the Kingsman clan and start choking the Dombivli city trade routes, but he was waiting to formulate a perfect plan before attacking since the enemy might be expecting it. "Zippo, are you knowledgeable in matters of military strategy?" Max asked his shadow who remained by his side, giving him the creeps 24/7 as usual. Zippo did not reply to Max choosing to remain in his silent shadow state. This had become a routine for Zippo who had not answered more than 2 words to Max since becoming his guard. The 2 words being, yes, and no. If there was ever a documentary on a man of few words, he would become the perfect candidate. During this time Max had not slacked off in his training inside the mirror world, as shockingly he had regressed back in his progress once more. After becoming Tier 4, his mirror world-controlled AI clone was also Tier 4 possessing newfound abilities. Once again Max felt out of place as he could not last 3 minutes against his own self. Previously his average had improved till about 11 minutes and dealt 35% damage, but now it had regressed again. The good thing was that Max was able to practice, disperse, again and again, as he grasped the fundamentals of the attack. Disperse was a move which required him to be quick and precise. He could disperse an incoming enemy attack with an extremely sharp blade, or his own fingers while coated with energy or sword chi. The main idea was to hit a mana attack's imperfection and cause the unstable mana combination to crumple. Mana was not supposed to take form, it was a free-flowing river. However, spells, objects, runes, altered its flow in such a way that it changed characteristics. If one were to find a flaw in this creation, they could destroy it with much less effort. However, if one could not exactly target this weakness, it would prove to be lethal. Having died 347 times in the mirror world while using Disperse, Max was no stranger to using it wrongly. Ha! Master Kremitha's move is so hard to grasp, also Grandpa Drax's clone is unbelievably strong, Max commented as he complained about his strict training to himself, before also consoling himself and getting back to training anyways. Drax had always made Max feel he was far from his potential and that his enemy was only using strength he was capable of, but what Drax never deliberately told Max was that his enemy was always slightly stronger than Max. At Tier 4 Max's strength already rivaled peak Tier 5, hence his opponent was no longer actually Tier 4 in strength, but a perfect peak Tier 5 warrior. It was only Max who believed the enemy to be the perfect version of himself at the same tier, which was why he pushed himself too hard. The miracle he performed by killing the dragon was because of this madness training that he did in the mirror world, because while Max did not realize it, he was constantly battling high-level existences. In a way, he was even more talented than the ancient fire god Agni, and Drax could see that clearly. Naturally, he was never going to mention this topic to Max, not even as a joke or in passing, afraid that he would gain a big ego after listening to it. Meanwhile Severus was on a scouting mission inside Dombivli City for many weeks now. He had already located the spots where the enemy had hidden anti-battleship weapons stored, as he planned to take them all out without anyone noticing when he had the chance. Severus was not only a sweeper, but also a scientist and a very good one at that. He had a basic understanding of machines and weapons and could understand how to dismantle them, hence night after night, he caused 1 or 2 guards to black out as he secretly deactivated the air defense mechanism before vanishing without a trace. Ho ho! Ho, I'm only doing this because I don't want ashes and debris to fall onto the streets I've so painstakingly cleared. Roalpha it will be too much hassle to clean it all again. I'd rather not have our army blow up, Severus murmured to himself, as even now his biggest concern was pollution and cleaning. /////n. Chapter 4 of 40, that's it for today. /////. Chapter 363 The Clone's Debut. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max had thought long and hard about how to save his Captain Raven persona from being sniffed out as Max Rajput, and in the end he had an ingenious idea. Summoning all the troops stationed in the Paradis capital, Max planned to give a mass speech where he would introduce the new Commander-General of the rebel forces in Max Rajput. New 1, standing on the stage as he looked down on a few odd 250,000 soldiers, Max felt a sense of accomplishment at the growing size of his army. For security reasons he could no longer attack other planets with his full military might, as it would leave his conquered planets defenseless. Currently 250,000 soldiers were stationed in the Paradis capital, about 50,000 on Green Soil planet and 100,000 on the mining planet. Soldiers. We have already won 2 of the 5 planets controlled by the dastardly Kingsman clan, and the time to eliminate them completely is drawing near. We have lost some brave soldiers along the way, but we have also gained new friends. I'm proud to say that our army has expanded significantly and we are no longer a small rebel group that can be ignored. We have land, we have men, and we have destroyer ships. Nobody can ignore us anymore. Max dressed as Raven said as the crowd broke into cheers. Everyone could visibly see the changes around them. There were new brigades forming every day, the training grounds and drills improved significantly, and the size of the army kept expanding. These changes brought a breath of fresh air to the army, as the troop morale was soaring high. Max raised his hand to demand silence, and once the crowd was sufficiently quiet he said, "Every army needs a capable commander. I'm a good strategist, a quite crazy one at that, but make no mistake men, I'm no commander. I can lead you all bravely into battle, but I can't pull you out of it should something go wrong." With the expanding size of the army, after a lot of deliberation I've decided that it would be best if I brought a capable commander to share the burden of leading you fine men into battle, and by King Regus's grace I found the perfect person for this job. In recent times, you men must have heard tales about Shikuni the Terrifying, the Tier 7 god who killed Thunder Monarch Thor, the undefeated warrior who completed Omega with a Tier 6 evaluation, the ultimate strategist who has never lost a war. While that great man is dead, I have the privilege of calling his younger brother as my sworn brother. He is the best warrior I have ever faced in my life and a man who I'm sure will lead this army to great heights. Men, greet Field Commander Max Rajput. The crowd clapped lightly, as Max's clone walked onto the stage. The clone was dressed in loose Earth-styled clothes, as he wore an arrogant look on his face and scanned the crowd with contempt. Apart from his neck and face, the clone's body was fully covered in clothing as he wore thick rubber gloves around his hands even when the temperature outside was warm. Max did not want anyone to see the clone's skin and determine that they were the same person, as he made sure to give the clone contact lenses to change the hue of red in his eyes, and a scar tape which when applied to his cheek made it look like he had a faded scar mark on his face. Max's real looks were incredibly handsome. With a charm value of 88 he was instantly able to draw the attention of many women soldiers on the battlefield, while the men felt intimidated by his cool and calm gaze. The clone patted the real Max on the back, before taking the podium as he said, "I'm a man of few words, I don't like to come to the center stage of universal affairs, but since my brother Raven requested me to help him settle some affairs I agreed. You all may think, why do we have to accept this man who is not related to us in any way suddenly as our commander? It's a great question, and the answer is because I'm the strongest one in this army. I'm the best strategist, the best warrior and the best person to lead you into battle while ensuring that the loss of life is minimal. If you think I'm arrogant, then you would be right. I'm arrogant, that's pride in the Rajput that I am, the mighty warrior of the human race. If any single one of you have objections about my abilities or think you don't wish to serve under me, this is your chance to come challenge and best me in 1 versus 1 battle. If not, hold your peace forever." The clone spoke these words in a perfect Rudra-like accent as even Max felt goosebumps go down his spine when he saw the acting of his clone. "I do. This is dog's hit. I follow Captain Raven based on his achievements. I ain't taking shit from someone I don't know. I'll test your so-called mighty strength," one of the soldiers said as he stepped forward to challenge Max's clone. The clone calmly put his hands in his pockets before walking down the stage to face the guy 1 versus 1. The soldiers all huddled around the two men, giving them space to fight, as while the soldier who stepped up to fight the clone drew a sword, the clone only sighed deeply and did not even bother taking his hands out of his pocket. "You don't want a weapon?" the enemy asked, as the clone rolled his eyes in a comedic fashion and said, "Just get this over with." The enraged soldier charged at the clone, who with his over 6,200 points in agility easily outpaced the Tier 3 opponent like it was nothing. For 3 minutes straight, the enemy soldier thrusted and slashed at full power but was never able to even scratch the shadow of the clone who had his hands in his pockets. "Boring," the clone eventually said as he roundhouse kicked the sword out of the man's hand with his left leg and followed it up with another roundhouse kick to his face with his right leg. Splat! The soldier spat a mouthful of blood as his sword that went flying out of his hand landed in the soil beside him. "A 1,000 of you are not my match," the clone said as he looked down on the man in contempt before turning his back and walking away. The soldier, who was enraged by this public humiliation, pulled his sword out of the soil and prepared to unleash his strongest sword strike on the clone, when the clone simply removed one hand from his pocket and snapped his fingers without even turning to face his opponent. A terrifying thunderbolt suddenly fell down from the sky and hit the ground beside the soldier, who began quaking in his boots at the crazy power of the attack. Had the attack been a few centimeters to the left, he would undoubtedly be dead at the moment, but the general had mercifully decided to spare him. It was at this moment that the entire army was convinced of the clone's strength as a faint chant of "Long live Commander Max" started amongst the troops. Max smiled, looking at the developing situation, as this was exactly what he wanted. // Chapter 5 of 40, A New Day, A New Goal // Chapter 364 The news spread. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max merged back with his clone and had a splitting headache for 1 full hour. This was the first time he had actually terminated the skill and merged back with his clone, as the first time the clone was outright dead, which was why merging back did not hurt. Max was flooded with memories and first-person POV of the clone, and all the actions that he had taken while summoned. On the plus side, this experience taught him that if he were to ever send the clone on a mission alone, he would retrieve all the memories of the mission once over. On the other hand, it also taught him that regardless of if he planned on using the clone right in front of his eyes, already aware of his every action, it would still hurt his brain when merging back together. Max had decided to demarcate some powers between himself and his clone, as he wanted to create an illusion that while he was a fire mage type warrior, Max Rajput was the real assault type player. Today's events were sure to reach the ears of many interesting parties, and Max could not wait to see their reactions. Meanwhile, Julian Caesar, what the fuck is wrong with you? What am I to make of this report? Julian questioned his information head as he banged the report file on the table. The information head was as perplexed as he was, but the information head had an explanation prepared for this situation. I think it's an imposter, a side actor, someone Raven has brought to stand in for himself to fool the world. Nobody makes someone commander right out of thin air. I'm sure it's all a hoax, the information head said with a certain degree of confidence as Julian Caesar bitch slapped him chappa. Thankfully Julian controlled his power perfectly to make the slap feel like a slap and not a death blow, as he pointed to the report and said, the imposter used the attack Thunderblast. Raven doesn't have such a move in his arsenal. It's a different guy. The information head raised his finger as if wanting to say something, but then quickly lowered it, fearing another tight slap, as he shook his head in shame and remained silent. Go on, say it, Julian said as he pinched the top of his nose. Patriarch, he could have obtained a skill scroll from anyone, it doesn't prove anything. I'm sure the imposter will soon be revealed to be fake when it actually comes time to fight in a war, the information head said as he received another tight slap. Chappa, it also doesn't disprove anything. Thankfully I did not submit this report to the king, otherwise he would think I'm dumb and the Caesar clan is inept, Julian said in anger as he dismissed his minister. Meanwhile, on the Earth settlement on Radiance, the front page of every news outlet that once belonged to Earth showed a picture of Max addressing an army of 250,000 strong. As the title read, Earth's hero is back in action. Max was a very beloved individual amongst the Earthlings. Everyone constantly looked for news surrounding him, but the man was very low-key and elusive. He was seldom spotted in any part of the universe and never created major waves, which was why his every appearance became a major social event. While most media outlets ran a complete story about how Max had joined the rising star Raven and decided to wage war on the Kingsman clan, some media outlets looking for juicy stories edited Max's photo and put Rudra's photo of addressing the True Elites Guild side by side, with the headlines being one and the same. Their take on this situation was that it was Max's legacy to become a commander and lead armies, and that it was a trait of the Rajput clan. While some common netizens were happy about him joining some organization, many were unhappy to see him joining a vampire organization instead of a human one. His handsomeness had increased exponentially over the years, and his recent photo stirred the heart of many earthly maidens, as the scar on his face quickly became a topic of deep discussion and mystery amongst simp chat forums. Meanwhile, Naomi took a look at the photo in the newspaper and felt puzzled as to why Max was standing beside Max in the photo. But after a while she understood the whole picture and could not help but laugh her ass off. Her heart moved as she realized that Max had made this a public affair and tried to save his alternate identity to save Naomi and the rest of Rudra's family from unwanted dangers. While he was not the best brother-in-law who came home to visit the family often, Naomi could sleep well knowing that he was out in the universe always looking out for them, just like his brother did before death. Mex, the little Kartikay said as he banged his hands on the newspaper, his 2 rabbit baby teeth not able to pronounce properly, as he instantly recognized his uncle from the photo in the newspaper. Ruby picked up Kartikay as she kissed the little angel on his cheeks. Yes, it's Uncle Max, look how handsome he looks in the newspaper. Roalpha D. Newell, Mex. Mex. Mex, Kartikei said innocently as a harmonious atmosphere could be seen inside the Rajput mansion. Soon, listening in on the conversation, the toddlers Jake and Amy came running into the room as they picked up the newspaper and tried to read what the article said word by word. Unfortunately, Jake picked up a newspaper which had shown Max's photo beside an old photo of Rudra, as the innocent Jake was unable to understand that it was an old photo saying, "Look Mom, Dad's photo is beside Uncle Max's. Dad is still alive." Listening to this comment, both Naomi and Ruby turned teary-eyed as they did not have the heart to tell the kids the truth. /////n, Chapter 6 of 40 Let's Go, /////. Chapter 365 Unexpected Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The soldiers woke up groggily as they were summoned in the middle of the night to be ready for deployment. Nobody had any prior news of an attack plan, as everyone scrambled to get into uniform. Max had decided to attack both the remaining Kingsman planets today at once, as while he was leading one of the attacks himself, he was letting his clone lead the other. With the addition of the new destroyer-class battleships, Max had a lot of aerial power to deal initial damage before landing on a planet, hence, he was confident in winning the two planets while only having 100,000 soldiers assigned for both attacks. For the sake of making a big impact, Max chose to play the character of Max Rajput in this attack, while he let his clone be Captain Raven. The reason he did this was because Captain Raven's prowess in war was already a known fact and he need not increase his reputation in this fight. But on the other hand, the vampire army did not truly understand Max's strength, nor did they believe in his ability to lead them. For this reason, Max needed to ensure that his real persona, Max Rajput, gained a good reputation from this fight, so the rebel army finally accepted it completely. With Max this time was only Sebastian, while Anna and Abu were with the clone. While Vega already knew about Max's real identity, Max had not revealed the secret of his clone to Abu as he did not trust the Titus clan representative completely. Except for his group, he did not intend for a single outsider to be in possession of his secret. Abu was a little reluctant to give the command of his troops to an outsider, but after Vega provided a "no objection" letter, Abu reluctantly agreed to it. The attack today was not abrupt at all, although the troops had no idea that it was going to occur tonight. Ever since the day that Max had returned he was planning the next strike, but since he was not sure if there were spies within his army currently, he did not reveal this information to the men. These ships are so cool, we can even see through the windows while landing. In the merchant ships all we see is fire, Sebastian said as he enjoyed the view of the lush green forest-like planet on which he and Max were landing on their destroyer-class battleships. The planet they were planning on capturing today was called Wet Planet because it was a tropical planet with rainfall 24/7. The planet's main purpose was to be used as a timber industry planet, as the only crops that grew on the planet were thick trees which needed minimal sunlight, whereas the agricultural crops had no way of surviving due to lack of sunlight. The only civilized city on the entire planet was called Freya, where a total of 80,000 Kingsman clan soldiers were stationed. Max and Sebastian watched peacefully as the rebel pilots destroyed one enemy air defense system after another, before open firing on the enemy military base with powerful spell channeling mechanisms. By the time Max set foot on the enemy soil, 30 of the 80,000 enemy troops were already dead, while Max's forces only lost a minor 200 troops in an unfortunate landing gear malfunction accident. Although the planet still had a Tier 5 protector, Max knew that this fight was already as good as won. Meanwhile the clone and Anna stared curiously at the clone. Although she knew that it was a fake, she could not believe her eyes when she saw the clone's posture and mannerisms, as she could really not differentiate him from the real Max. The two had the same height, same build, and with the concealer mask and Max's usual armor the clone looked exactly like Max. What gave Asiva the creeps was that the clone's voice was also perfectly like Max's, as the way he talked and the way he pronounced certain words was exactly how Max did it. The clone was a 99.999% perfect copy of Max, with the only difference between the fake and the real one being the aroma. Anna had never told Max about this, but he and especially his sweat emanated a very manly aroma that was unique to him. It was an aroma which made Anna feel weak between the legs whenever she smelled it, as it made Max's overall appeal irresistible. The clone did not have such an aroma around itself, which was the only difference it had from the real one in terms of physical appearance. In terms of combat efficiency, the clone did not have Max's fire resistance and fire controlling abilities, but it could still use his bloodline ability of blood manipulation. The planet she and the clone were headed to this time was called Greyhouse. It was a crude planet with only 40,000 civilians who were not natives but were migrant workers trying to establish a Kingsman base on the planet. Greyhouse was an inhospitable planet which was inherently extremely cold to sustain life. However, its geographic location was such that if it were developed into a proper docking planet for passing ships, it could generate a lot of income for the Kingsman clan. The planet only had a measly 60,000 troops guarding it, and its Tier 5 Guardian had been already pulled out by the Kingsman clan, because it was not worth losing that man for the sake of this worthless planet. The destroyer battleships landed smoothly on the planet, as a short battle began between the rebel troops and the Kingsman forces for the control of the area. The clone charged into battle with a staff as he spammed attacks like energy blasts and summoned giants, while tagging along with Anna, who did most of the damage. Within 2 hours the resistance had been wiped out as a clean victory had been obtained by the rebel forces. //A/N. Chapter 7 of 40, Let's Go. // Chapter 366 Tier 5 Opponent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The men swarmed at the enemies with vigor and gusto as the start of the hand-to-hand combat was pretty one-sided in favor of the rebels. Sebastian went wild with his sword, yelling all sorts of insults at the enemy troops while sending them to the afterlife for underestimating him. Max had almost no need to interfere in the battle at all, as even without him killing a single enemy his forces seemed to be doing very well. Max had his hands wrapped around his back, as he casually strolled through the war-torn battlefield without a weapon in hand or armor on his body. Max looked more like a traveler taking a stroll in a foreign city's garden than a commander of an army, as he did not give a single fuck about fighting with his men, choosing to avoid any challengers coming his way or dealing with them in 1 or 2 kicks. To make Max Rajput easily discernible from Raven, the persona Max had decided to give his real self was that of an arrogant young master, someone with an extremely massive ego with the skills to back it. Based on this persona, Max strolled through the battlefield casually, as he did not even bother fighting with troops weaker than his tier. The only opponent Max was truly interested in fighting was Dunzetsu, the Tier 5 keeper of the planet and a dual sword user known for his AoE-type attacks. While strolling, Max felt an increase in mana concentration to his right, as he understood that someone was preparing a large attack, as he finally shook off his laziness and bursted with speed towards the source of the mana concentration. World Devouring Slash. Dunzetsu unleashed a Tier 5 attack, World Devouring Slash, which was a massive sword chi attack about 1 kilometer wide, traveling quickly towards a bulk of rebel soldiers, while cutting everything within its path. Trees began to fall one after another, as the rebel troops were terrified from the inbound attack, having no means to stop it. The attack was so powerful, if it were used in a metropolitan city like New York on Earth, it would cut off a portion of the city's skyline at once, toppling at least 10.12 skyscrapers at once. Dunzetsu had put a considerable amount of power behind the attack, as he expected that it would reap at least 20.25000 enemy lives. Disperse. Right when the attack was going to clash into the front lines of the rebel forces, Max dashed forward with his incredible agility as he pulled out his sword, the recently repaired Bloodsucker, and targeted the imperfection of the enemy attack perfectly. The massive sword strike that had cleared 300 meters of forest area without showing any signs of slowing down, was dispelled by Max with a casual move of his sword, as everyone watching the scene was stunned speechless. Era. It's rude to attack men significantly weaker than yourself. If you are itching for a fight so much, why don't you pick on someone your own size? Max asked with confidence, as for the first time ever he made a bold impression in the hearts of all the soldiers around him. Deafening cheers broke out amongst the rebel soldiers. These men had stared at the face of death just moments ago, however, their calm, collected, arrogant and confident commander had dispelled the enemy's strongest move like it was nothing, elevating his status in their minds as the strongest. "Huh, good one kid, if your disperse failed this time it would have been a very funny incident," Grandpa Drax said within Max's head as Max himself grinned nervously. Having trained within the mirror world constantly, Max had a better grip on the disperse spell, but he could only successfully do it 6 out of 10 times for now, which was still a big risk in practical combat. "Max Rajput, I've heard about you. This is not your war, it's an internal matter amongst us vampires. Walk away now and I'll spare your life, dare to stay. And I'll feast on your blood tonight," Danzetsu warned. Thunderblast, Kaboom. 71, 500 Max did not engage in meaningless word exchange as he instantly conveyed his intentions with a thunderblast. Danzetsu was quick to react and blocked the brunt of the attack, but since it was elemental in nature he could not block its power completely, taking a sizable damage as a result. "Very well, it's your death wish," Danzetsu said as he charged towards Max through the cleared forest area. Max changed the grip on his sword from a foregrip to a side grip and started to calmly walk towards his charging enemy. Every soldier present around the area watched with bated breaths as the two powerhouses collided, with Max choosing to only put pressure behind his last step before clashing against Danzetsu, using a sudden burst in agility to throw the enemy off. Not only did Max look extremely cool for fighting with a side grip and walking towards his opponent as if he were not even worthy to come in his eyes, but it also gave him a practical combat advantage as Danzetsu was completely unable to get a read on Max's speed of attacks. One of the techniques Max had understood while facing his clone was that faster was not always better when trying to fight 1 versus 1. The important aspect was to break the enemy's rhythm and create openings to land clean strikes. With his exaggerated speed and sharp strike responses, Max was able to neutralize Danzetsu completely as despite the gap in tier, the gap in actual strength was negligible. Block, block, counter, block, fake out, overhead slash. Max used Kremeth's teachings to perfectly block the enemy's barrage while creating chances to counter, until he used fake out to make the enemy think he was aiming for his right knee, before suddenly attacking him from above the head in an overhead slash. Chingig Danzetsu crossed his swords above his head as Max's attack forced him to buckle to his knees as Max applied pressure to open up his defenses. Everyone was shocked seeing the mighty Tier 5 general on his knees while defending against a relatively unknown opponent. As taking advantage of this opportunity, Max said, "On your knees. Dog." This comment was akin to rubbing salt on open wounds as Danzetsu went wild with rage after listening to it. /////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////// push past today /////. Chapter 367 Victory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On your knees. Dog. This comment was akin to rubbing salt on open wounds as Danzetsu went wild with rage after listening to it. He used the move, Leaf Blade Hurricane, to force Max on the back foot but did not realize that he was walking straight into Max's trap. Max was retreating purposefully. He had seen an area where some bleeding soldier had created a puddle of blood and was hence luring Danzetsu towards that area. In Danzetsu's mind it was his flurry of attacks that was pushing Max back, but the reality of the situation was quite different. The home soldiers defending the planet cheered for their leader as they thought he had finally gained the upper hand in the battle, but their celebrations were short-lived. Max stepped into the blood puddle and began preparing his spell. The moment Danzetsu stepped into the puddle as well after pushing Max 2 steps behind, Max used the move, Blood Chains, to bind his legs and make him trip. Danzetsu was caught off guard. He had no idea how his legs were suddenly restrained as he saw no movements done by the enemy. However, as he was knocked off balance, Max instantly used the opening to use the move, 9 Ashura sword slice. It was the strongest sword move in Max's arsenal, which focused on consecutive hits to deal critical damage as one after another he swiftly and strongly delivered dangerous blows. 3, 000.7, 000.13, 000.15, 000.20, 000.30, 000 critical hit. 45, 000 critical hit. 60, 000 critical hit. 80, 000 critical hit. Max looked like a demon as he hacked through the body of the Tier 5 warrior, leaving him mangled and dead by the end of the barrage. System notification. You have killed the Tier 5 warrior, Danzetsu. Since you have killed a light faction warrior in a light faction territory, EXP rewards will be reduced. You have gained plus 250,000 gold coins plus 1 Shadowbane sword, epic, plus 800,000 EXP, system remark. Have you grown used to killing your own brethren? Are you sure you are not a cold-blooded monster? System notification. You have leveled up. Max killed Danzetsu and switched his blade for Danzetsu's before raising the Shadowbane sword and declaring, "Anybody else dares to fight me? Or are we done here?" Max scanned the entire battlefield, making eye contact with every enemy soldier as he let his aura flare unrestrained. Under his gaze and performance the enemy soldiers were terrified as one after another they threw their weapons to the ground and kneeled in surrender. Loud cheers erupted from the rebel camp as chants of "Long live Commander Max" could be heard throughout the battlefield. Bind the enemy, tend the injured, take control of the planet, Max commanded nonchalantly as he went back to the posture of tying his hands behind his back and walking as if he were taking a stroll. He had concluded today's fight in more than convincing fashion. A few hours later, Dombivli City, ugh, ag, oh yes. Roy Kingsman moaned like a little girl as he indulged in carnal pleasures ever since he became One Nut Roy. He had an insatiable desire to prove his manhood evernight, but unfortunately for him, he failed every single time. While he moaned, the woman he was indulging with did not make a single sound as she wondered when all this would be over. If not for the high pay, she would rather not have copulation with a man-child who did not understand how to pleasure a woman. Knock, 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 brother. Brother, open up. Roy Kingsman heard a few knocks and the voice of Keen Kingsman shouting from across the door as he became irritated at the intrusion. Fuck off Keen, I'm fucking a whore's brains out, Roy shouted, as he increased the pace of his hip thrusts. The whore under him rolled her eyes in contempt when she heard this statement. She truly wished to be fucked out of her brains, but Roy was not capable enough of doing it. Brother. It's urgent, please, Keen requested from across the door as reluctantly Roy pulled his stiff cock out and began getting dressed. Put on some clothes, Roy commanded the woman, who very cheerfully got dressed. After a while, Roy opened the door as he saw a panting Keen standing across the door alongside his uncle Farid. What's the matter? Roy asked with a surprised voice. Emergency council meeting, brother. The rebels have captured 2 more planets, Keen said as Roy was left mouth agape at the news. He eyed his uncle for answers, who hung his head down in shame, however did not offer a single word in explanation. Excellent, you both go ahead, I shall be there in a moment. Roy said as he mumbled curses under his breath to Asiva and Raven and prepared for the council meeting. A few moments later, in the courtroom, everyone appeared to be groggy and distressed as they were summoned in the middle of the night for this emergency meeting. Strongman Farid, this is unacceptable. 2 more of our planets fell within hours and Strongman Danzetsu is dead. The only planet we control now is Dombivli. Lose this and we lose our title as a named clan. A council member raised his concerns directly as he blamed Farid for the current situation. There is nothing to be alarmed, we always knew this day was coming. We had pulled away manpower and resources from those planets so that we could defend Dombivli better. Now the enemy has to maintain troop presence on 4 planets and will not have enough manpower to attack Dombivli, where we shall crush them and take back what's ours. Today is a tactical retreat, tomorrow shall be a glorious victory, Farid said as he tried to make everyone optimistic about the current situation but failed. Not only were their backs against the wall, the only plan they could follow now was Farid's and hope that it worked. Dombivli was the last planet the Kingsmen controlled now, and should they lose it, they would lose everything. It's been reported that Max Rajput, the brother of Shikuni the Terrifying, has joined forces with Raven and was responsible for taking on Danzetsu one-on-one and coming out unscratched. Such a warrior is to be looked out for, as while Raven doesn't have the strength to fight out Tier 5 warriors, he does. With him on the enemy camp, the entire war situation changes significantly, a council member reported as Roy Kingsman cursed under his breath. Why is a human interfering in our matters? Doesn't he have better things to do? What does he stand to gain from this arrangement? If it's money or power, contact him and buy him to our side, don't let him stay on Raven's side, Roy said as he expressed his intention to poach Max if possible. He's Raven's sworn brother apparently, although we don't know when the two came in contact or became sworn brothers. We don't think it's possible to poach him to our side with him sharing such a relationship with Raven, the intelligence head reported as Farid made a sour face. He had heard about the reputation of Shikuni the Terrifying, and had no intentions of facing his brother in battle if his prowess was anything comparable. //a/n. Chapter 9 of 40, A New Day, let's go //. Chapter 368 Headache. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Julian Caesar's POV, My head hurts. It's been 40 years since my head hurt this bad. I haven't had such a bad headache since that fucker Vega became a Tier 7 god, Julian said as he pulled his own hair out of his head. I'm sorry my patriarch, but nothing in this case seems to make sense, the information head said as he was in quite the dilemma himself. Max Rajput and Raven had simultaneously attacked 2 planets at once, and not one soldier could spot the abnormality between either. On Captain Raven's side, he was seen using his usual moves, alongside his usual teammates as he led the army to a quick and swift victory. On Max Rajput's side, he was seen using a move set that differed from Raven's completely, however, still used the same sword that Raven was often seen using. Apart from the 2 men being on different planets at the same time, in an actual physical form, they also displayed their unique temperaments that they were usually associated with, making it a case where no facts made any sense. It cannot be an imposter playing both roles. If it were an imposter or an actor, someone would have noticed the difference. Although there are various techniques such as illusion clone and shadow clone that can make clones of an individual, none of the clones possess the ability of individual thought and separate action. Not only did the 2 men physically fight on 2 different planets, but they were quite a large distance apart. There is no cloning spell which has such a large area of effect, Julian said as he rubbed his eyes, but sir, then why would Max Rajput use Raven's sword? A man of his background and stature must have better swords. This point doesn't make sense, the information head retorted as Julian felt his headache increasing. Raven gifted it to Max perhaps, or maybe it's something that I don't fucking know, because it's not my job to know. It's your fucking job to find all this, not to come into my office every 3 days and eat my brains, Julian said in an angry tone as he finally snapped at his information head. That idiot had fed him wrong conclusions after wrong conclusions every single day, and now his head hurt from discerning the facts from the truths. The information head shuddered. He could not wrap his head around this situation either, and he worried that if he tried to ask his patriarch more questions he would either lose his job or his life. For once. Considering they are different people, does a lot of things make sense then? Julian asked after a while as he gave the matter one last attempt on his end. Yes sir, 95% of things will make sense if they are different people, the information head reported. Then ignore the last 5% you dipshit and try digging up information on Raven. What the human Max does is not of any concern to King Regus Aurelius, but he has given me a mission to find out the secret Raven is hiding. Can you do that and not pick my brains needlessly? Julian asked his information head, who nodded fervently. Good, now get the fuck out and don't come back here without an intel report on Max with hard facts. I'm not doing this session of who is who with you ever again, Julian said as he dismissed his information chief. Although the information head had his suspicions, for now he was forced to treat the 2 as separate entities. As if he did not, he would definitely lose his job. Meanwhile, Angakok, your mastery of the wind astonishes me every time I see you using it. Your disciple is not too shabby at it either, Angakok commented to Kremeth as the turtle used the wind to move large blocks of rhodium crystals weighing several hundred tons from the ground to the top of the structure they were building. Not only was Kremeth going to use the various elemental masters as a teacher for Max, he was also using them as free labor to help him construct the time chamber. The old fogies of the past whose powers were on a decline had to perform hard labor for Angakok against their wills as they expended more power in the last few weeks than they had in over a century. The time chamber was a massive structure which used unbelievable precious materials to be constructed, as the pressure of the Tier 10 time stone was not something that every material could withstand, as only the most outstanding things in the universe could channel its power. Varun, the sea god, was the most groggy about doing free labor, as not only was he the weakest in the group, but also the most senior member. He was the god of the sea before Poseidon usurped him and banished him, an individual who had been on the sidelines for most of the Chaos era. However, not only did he remain the only individual to ever fully grasp the law of water, he refused to teach it to even the new king Poseidon. He remembered that day as clear as it was yesterday when Angakok slayed Poseidon in the Chaos era and enslaved the Tier 8 beast the Sea Kraken, as even as the prior sea god he could not understand how such a feat was possible. On that day he thanked his lucky stars to have conceded his throne to Poseidon without much struggle and let the upstart deal with Angakok, as if there was one god in the universe he did not wish to mess with, it was that blood shaman. Little did he know that thousands of years later, that madman would still come looking for him and force him into doing free hard labor. Well, it was not exactly free, as Angakok did promise him Poseidon's trident if he taught his student well, as it was a treasure that Varun could not reject. He had been declining in power for a long time, and the power of the sea within that trident could undoubtedly help him reverse his aging for at least 1,000 years. An opportunity that he was unwilling to let go. //////A/N. Chapter 1040, On a Roll. /////. Chapter 369, Choking Trade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everything is in order. Max asked Sebastian, who beat his chest in pride as he said, "Everything is in order." A wide grin appeared on Max's face as he clenched his fists in joy. "Time to choke them bastards' trade routes then," Max said as Sebastian began rubbing his palms and laughing evilly. Soon the destroyer-class battleships were sent to patrol all major trade routes going towards Domovli City, with the free license to loot, threaten and destroy any hostile merchant groups that refused to cooperate. Max's ultimate plan to weaken the Kingsman clan was always to choke their trade routes from the start, and now that he controlled every single area of the galactic space around Domovli City, he could finally enact this plan. It was at this moment that the preparation time was over and the real fight truly began. Meanwhile, on planet Radiance, in a rather luxurious office, Ethan Gray sat across Christian Gray as the father and son duo read the newspaper in silence inside their huge corporate office. "Your childhood friend has finally made an appearance, his strength is no joke," Ethan commented as he teased Christian about this aspect. Ever since Christian was a child, he had always regarded Max as his only true friend, as in his private childhood diary he had put Max's name under the best friends column. Although it had been several years since that incident, Ethan always brought it up to humiliate his son, as to him it was an event of great humor. "I have already matured, father, but sometimes I wonder when will you?" Christian replied calmly, as he did not seem to be affected by the comment at all. Having drunk the same poison all too often, he was now immune to its effects. "Regardless, I always told you that keeping this boy close would be beneficial. One of the best business and personal decisions I ever made in my life was to befriend Rudra Rajput. If only you did the same with Max, you would enjoy picking up spoils of this war here today," Ethan commented as he took a sip of some exquisite tea. "Unlike you, I don't make friends for money or benefits, I already have enough of those," Christian said as he pointed around the office and reminded his father that he had built this place with his own skills and not because of his father's influence. Ever since leaving Earth, Ethan had slowly began to retire, giving up more and more responsibilities of the Grey International to his son Christian as he began to sideline himself. With a head full of grey hair, he no longer had the same energy to do things as Christian did, and that son of his had proven himself to be worthy. To build his empire, Christian took daring risks that no other merchant would take in a million years, as he bought goods on credit without having the money to back it up, only to sell them quickly for profit and pay his manufacturers in a timely fashion. Using this method, he not only gained a trusted reputation as a creditor but continued to aggressively expand his business till it reached this massive scale. A small slip-up along the way could have brought down his glass house. However, with his wits and guts he sailed his business through troubled waters before finally having the financial ability to back up his credit. Christian built a merchant empire out of nearly nothing, and for it Ethan had nothing but immense respect. "Knock knock, come in," Christian said as he let his personal assistant in. "Sir, Max Rajput wishes to meet you in secret tomorrow. Do you wish to take the meeting?" The secretary said as Ethan Gray suddenly laughed and spilled some of the tea he was sipping before bursting into an outright laughter. Christian's eyes brightened at these words as he caught the infectious laughter of his father and smiled too. "Yes, I'll take it. Arrange a suitable place," Christian said as he reclined into his chair and shook his head with a gentle smile. Meanwhile, a merchant convoy carrying blacksmithing materials towards Dombivli city, unidentified merchant convoy. "Please halt your progress. You have entered the sovereign airspace of the Paredes clan without prior permission. Please stop your engine or we shall open fire," a rebel soldier said on the universal frequency via the destroyer battleship. The merchant convoy, consisting of 12 large ships, were surprised, as they often used this trade route and did not understand how suddenly they entered the sovereign airspace of some other clan. Some wondered if their equipment worked properly, while some feared it being a plot of pirates, but when they saw a genuine destroyer ship their fears calmed down a little as one of the ship attempted to make contact with the ship. "Destroyer ship, we are terribly sorry if we have entered your territory by accident. We wish to peacefully reach Dombivli city. Either let us pass or redirect us to a better path," the merchant leader said as he showed the proper respect to the other party while also requesting an alternate path. "Apologies, an embargo has been placed on Dombivli city. No trade ship is allowed to pass and go to that city. All trade routes are being monitored by the Paredes destroyers. Turn back and don't attempt to trade with the Kingsmen in the future. You have been warned," the radioman in the destroyer ship said as the merchant was stunned by this response. He was carrying valuable cargo for which he had already taken 30% advance, but now it seemed he had no means of offloading it and claiming the rest of the money. Faced with such a situation, he had no choice but to retreat with his convoy, as in his mind he cursed both the Paredes forces and the Kingsman clan for ruining his business. //////n. Chapter 11 of 40, not bad at all. /////. Chapter 370 Meeting Christian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Maxie, Christian said as he juggled an apple between his two hands and eyed every corner of Max's face. "You look as despicable as ever," Max commented as Christian chuckled. "The scar suits you, makes you appear dangerous but handsome," Christian complimented as he snapped his fingers twice. Within 5 seconds trays of food were placed on the table in front of Max as the rebel commander chuckled. "I'm not your date, Christian. I won't be impressed by your vanity," Max said as Christian threw his hands up in apology after Max's request for a meeting. Christian had specially booked out a high-end restaurant for the day as he met Max in a secluded room with noise cancellation features. Although he had no idea about the exact reason why Max requested to meet him, he could guess that it had something to do with the ongoing vampire war. "So, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit here today?" Christian asked in a joking tone. However, his sharp eyes showed his true intentions, which were not humorous at all. "You owe the pleasure of my visit, for I have a business opportunity for you today," Max replied perfunctorily as he too raised his right hand and pretended to make a finger-snapping motion. "The difference between your business opportunity and mine is that at the snap of your fingers a few servants rush to bring in food. At the snap of my fingers, this restaurant turns to rubble," Max said as he coldly stared into Christian's eyes, reminding the other party that he was in control of the discussion here. For a moment, Christian was taken aback. the Max he remembered was clumsy and lacked self-confidence. However, the Max he met today had already matured into quite a man. "Tell me more about this business opportunity," Christian said as he took a bite of his food and pretended not to be intimidated by Max's pressure tactics, although his back was drenched in sweat. "I'm choking the trade route for all ships going to Dombivli City. Within 3 months their supply of essential items such as cooking oil, iron and honey will start to deteriorate and soon civil order will start to collapse. The Kingsmen will become desperate, but not a single merchant would risk trading with them." "Not a single merchant but you," Max said as he paused and judged Christian Grey's reaction. The man had no changes to his facial expression as he moved his head from side to side and gestured for Max to continue. "We will let your merchant ships pass for the first few weeks and let you make a killing profit without taking any cut of the money. Instead, after a few weeks of gaining their trust, I want you to one day smuggle my soldiers into the city on a mass scale, as we bypass the air defenses and launch a surprise attack," Max said as Christian understood the gist of the plan. It was a well thought out and lucrative offer for Christian, whereby taking a large risk he could gain large amounts of profits, but since doing this mission would damage his reputation in the Universal Business Association as a sellout of the Paredes clan, he needed additional assurances from Max if he took this mission. "If I do this, I want to be made the exclusive trading firm for the new government and given priority on government contracts. I want a free base of operations that the new government will provide for in every conquered planet for 10 running years. And I also want a banking license to open a small finance bank in Dombivli," Christian said as he haggled over the price with Max. He was not averse to helping his friend in a tight situation, however, being a businessman to his core, it needed to be profitable for himself as well. Max thought about Christian's proposal for a while and after finding all of his demands reasonable he signed a contract with Christian and exchanged drinks for a happy cooperation in the future. Meanwhile at the Kingsman Council, they are targeting our merchant ships. "Not a single cargo ship can go out, not a single merchant ship can come in, we have been isolated," the council member responsible for economic stability shouted as he eyed Farid with malicious rage. "My lord, they have choked all trade routes, they are not planning an attack on Dombivli anytime soon, their ploy from the start was to choke out trade and make the economy bleed. We are truly in a dangerous situation now," another council member said as he expressed his views before Roy Kingsman. "Is there no merchant willing to supply us arms with? We were supposed to get parts for our air defense systems, weren't we? How do we get them now?" Roy asked as nobody in the council was able to look him in the eye and answer, "The merchants are scared shitless, my lord, they don't want to face political pressure and economic hardships. For them, changing their destination of trade from Dombivli City to other vampire clans is much more profitable than risking their lives to work for us," a council member eventually replied as Roy sulked into his seat. Ever since he had came to power, there was not a single council meeting where they talked about positive news. It was always more depressing than the last time, and 90% of it was because of Raven and his friends. Roy had never hated someone as much as he hated Asiva, Sebastian, Anna and Raven. Not only was the group his biggest headache in school, it was also the reason behind his constant troubles as one of these days he wanted to desperately flail them alive. Only when those 4 were dead, would Roy ever be able to live a peaceful life. //////A/N. Chapter 1240, that concludes Day 3. Thank you everyone who pushed me through today.